Hello, I'm Richard Gisbert, and you're at The Listening Post. This week, Wikileaks, the Iraq war logs.
It's completely disgusting.
And Julian Assange's contentious relationship with the mainstream news media. The new press freedom rankings are out. Journalists are finding life easier in Zimbabwe, more dangerous in the Philippines. The web videos that are out for more than just laughs.
There's a boom and bust cycle and good reason to fear it.
And the producers behind them who want to make you think. And step aside, Jets, Sharks, Bloods, and Crips. Here come the geeks. 4 years ago, Wikileaks, the whistleblowing website led by Julian Assange, did not even exist. Today, the organization is a central player in the coverage of some of the biggest news stories out there, including the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Wikileaks' most recent release, 400,000 previously classified U.S. military documents on Iraq, was another shot across the bow of the Pentagon. The news broke in a simultaneous way, online, in print, and for the first time on television. There are some patterns at play here. With each successive release of material, WikiLeaks has developed its partnership with major media outlets ranging from the New York Times to Al Jazeera. And every time the site delivers news, Julian Assange becomes a bigger and bigger part of the way the story's covered. It's as though Assange and his personality is of equal or greater interest to newsrooms than the news his organization drops in their laps. Our starting point this week is cyberspace, the site driving this story, the man who speaks for WikiLeaks, and the coverage and criticism he attracts.
Online whistleblower WikiLeaks has struck Washington another massive blow.
This isn't so much a leak as a deluge of information.
Digital media and the existence of organizations like WikiLeaks means that governments cannot keep massive secrets.
400,000 documents released by the whistleblowing website Wikileaks.
WikiLeaks has a very powerful role in forcing these issues, these very uncomfortable issues.
So how dangerous is this document drop?
If you can't kill the message, you kill the messenger.
The messenger in this case is Julian Assange. The media he works with are changing. Having collaborated in July on the Afghan war logs with print outlets from 3 countries, the New York Times, The Guardian in the UK, and Germany's Der Spiegel, this time WikiLeaks brought TV into the picture. SVT from Sweden, Channel 4 in Britain,
secret files from the Iraq war,
and Al Jazeera.
They reveal the covering up of Iraqi state torture.
When I saw the result of the Afghan collaboration, well, there was 14 pages in The Guardian, 17 in Der Spiegel, and 9 or something in the New York Times. That's a lot of newsprint.
But tonight, we tell the story of that war and occupation that the US military doesn't want you to know.
TV has a degree of emotional impact that you just don't get with newsprint. And I wondered if we couldn't actually combine these 2 types of impacts, sort of detailed factual reporting that you get from newsprint, and then the emotionality and that sort of conviction that pictures are true, and pull both of these together.
Proof that the coalition knew that torture was still happening.
Now, all of these together, when they went at the same time on the Friday night, had a major impact. And you look at 2 days on, and we've already seen 5,500 news articles, and this is just a tip of the iceberg. This has been reported worldwide. It has had huge impact.
Thousands of classified documents related to the war in Iraq.
We should bear in mind that this is the biggest media collaboration on an exclusive story that has ever occurred.
Conspicuous by their absence from the mix, American television news outlets. Assange says it was not for lack of trying. WikiLeaks talked to CNN, ABC, and PBS. All 3 networks declined.
US broadcasters just refused to come to a position where we could negotiate something useful.
And you're saying there's no doubt in your mind that you think the Pentagon leaned on them, or they want to maintain their relationship with the Pentagon and the administration?
I doubt very much that the Pentagon leaned on them.
You don't think the Pentagon had to?
No, I don't think they had to, which is more of the concern.
Classified documents that WikiLeaks obtained.
The Pentagon doesn't want these bad news stories going out. They want to control the conversation as much as possible. Unfortunately, for too long, the U.S. media has been complicit in that, because there's a culture in Washington that really says, if you ask the tough questions, you will be excluded, you will not have access, and you will be marginalized. So I think Too many mainstream journalists are afraid that they will lose that access. But when you have WikiLeaks releasing a trove of evidence, of military documents, it's very hard to ignore that.
So ignore it, the US media did not. But when CNN interviewed Assange, its reporter pressed him on stories about himself.
The story around you is eclipsing the work of WikiLeaks.
Criticisms of his management style, questions about a 2-month-old legal case in Sweden that has yet to result in a charge.
If you're going to contaminate this extremely serious interview with questions about my personal life.
Well, no, I'm not. But what I want to ask is that
Assange eventually walked.
ABC World News.
And when ABC reported on the Iraq war logs, its coverage took a similar turn.
It was so remarkable, I replayed it and took some notes.
Our Martha Raddatz, who travels the world covering security and defense issues.
Martha says, well, the civilian deaths that they said they didn't count, they're atrocious.
Startling detail about civilian deaths, torture of detainees at the hands of the Iraqis.
And I'm saying, wow, that's unusual for Martha to be that explicit. Here comes Diane Sawyer.
I know there's a lot of outrage about this again tonight.
I'm saying, oh, good, outrage, finally in Washington.
But tell me anything more about prosecuting?
I'm saying, prosecuting, that's exactly what's necessary. But then the rest of the sentence was,
anything more about prosecuting the WikiLeaks group?
And I'm saying, wow, where did that come from? That's right out of the blue.
And I think that's because the media is just simply unwilling to tell that narrative to the American people. It's a very uncomfortable narrative. It's one in which says the U.S. has been complicit in war crimes and atrocities against innocent civilians, and who really wants to discuss that?
Av sajten Wikileaks.
The media outside of the U.S. is much more willing to talk about these issues.
Issues like the body count in Iraq. The war logs indicate 15,000 more Iraqis have been killed than previously acknowledged. That's 5 times as many people as were killed in the 9/11 attacks that led to the invasion. The Iraq war logs are news. The question is, how long will WikiLeaks be allowed to find news and deliver it?
Julian Assange and WikiLeaks are probably living on borrowed time. I think the Pentagon is going to try to knock WikiLeaks out of commission, and I just hope that Julian Assange and the rest of them can be 2 steps ahead of the Pentagon, as they have shown themselves able to do thus far.
Next week, our extended interview with Julian Assange, the newsmaker on the news business, where WikiLeaks fits in or not, and whether the organization really is on borrowed time. Our Global Village voice is now on WikiLeaks, the story, and the way it was covered.
These WikiLeaks revelations about Iraq show how far journalism has fallen. In many ways, it should have been journalists releasing this information, not a whistleblower. Why is it that years after the Iraq war has started, it's only now that we get the intimate details of what we've been supporting? Torture and death squads.
The constant media reporting of the Pentagon claim that the war logs have put lives in danger is not only untrue, but monstrously hypocritical. Even NATO have confirmed that none of the Afghan leaks have led to reprisals in Afghanistan. But more importantly, since the invasion of Iraq was illegal under international law, it is the Pentagon, not WikiLeaks, that has illegally continued to put lives on both sides in danger since 2003.
Our Global Village Voices segment is the platform that our viewers use to let us know what they think of the global media and the way that news is covered. We're now approaching 5,000 fans on Facebook. You can go there or to our Twitter page to see what stories we're working on and how you can weigh in. You can also reach us the old-fashioned way by email. We're at listeningpost@aljazeera.net. Time now for Listening Post News Bites. In April this year, we told you about an Israeli journalist hiding out in Britain, on the run over some reporting he had done about the Israeli military. Now Yuri Blau, who works for the leftist newspaper Haaretz, has reportedly returned to Israel. Blau wrote on the Israeli military after allegedly receiving thousands of classified documents from a Nat Cam. She is a former Israeli soldier accused of leaking the documents relating to the illegal killing of Palestinian militants by Israeli forces. Ms. Cam has been under house arrest in Israel for the past 10 months and is expected to agree to a plea bargain deal that would reduce her sentence to a maximum of 15 years. Haaretz has reported that Blau has returned all the documents in his possession to the military, but has not been granted immunity from prosecution. One way or another, though, this case appears to be headed towards some sort of resolution. There is outrage both inside Uganda and beyond East Africa after a new newspaper there put out a front-page article that would land editors in many countries in jail. Rolling Stone is a 2-month-old weekly newspaper published in the capital, Kampala. It printed the names, photos, and addresses of what it called Uganda's top homosexuals. And the story was headlined, "Hang Them." Homophobia is widespread in Uganda, where homosexuality is illegal. There's even a new law under consideration that would make homosexual acts punishable by death. And despite criticism and legal challenges, the proposed law has yet to be thrown out by the courts. According to human rights activists in Uganda, some of the people mentioned in the article, including women, have been attacked and many have been harassed. The Paris-based media watchdog organization Reporters Without Borders has just released its 9th annual index on press freedom. Languishing at the bottom of the list are some of the usual suspects, among them Eritrea, North Korea, Turkmenistan, and Iran. Things are looking up, though, in Zimbabwe. Before the formation of the unity government there, it was at number 151. This year, it's up to 123. It's still no journalistic paradise, but as we reported a few weeks ago, at least the new government has licensed a few new independent newspapers. The Philippines is heading in the opposite direction, down from 122nd to 156th, primarily because of that politically inspired massacre in Maguindanao last November, in which 34 journalists lost their lives. The top of the media freedom list is heavy with Scandinavian countries, Iceland, Norway, Sweden, along with Finland, the Netherlands, and Switzerland. Remember that Iraqi journalist who threw his shoes at George W. Bush back in 2008 and ended up doing some time in jail? Well, the same thing has now happened in Australia.
Sorry about that, we're going to move on. We're watching...
Former Prime Minister John Howard, who sent troops to Iraq, was taking questions from a studio audience when the shoes started flying.
No, we're not going to do that, please. And this is for the Iraqi someone, please.
The shoeless man was escorted from the studio, as was a woman who told Howard that he had blood on his hands. Throwing shoes at politicians kicked off as an international form of protest when Muntadar al-Zaidi launched his pair of size 9s at Mr. Bush. Al-Zaidi was sentenced to 3 years in jail, released after 9 months, and became a bit of a folk hero in Iraq. The Australian shoe thrower named Pete Gray definitely needs to work on his technique, because compared to al-Zaidi, he either has a lack of political commitment or a weak throwing arm. We're back after the break with a piece on web videos, learning tools that are just a few clicks away. Welcome back. You know those web videos, the viral ones that your friends send you at work that you sneak a peek at hoping no one will notice? Here at the Listening Post, watching those kinds of videos is our job. And frankly, it's a bit of a shame that so many of them focus on cute animals or the bizarre behavior of humans. But as the web develops, there are more and more videos that don't just entertain, they educate. They tend to marry music and video to, in one case, provide you with the basics of economics and the ongoing debate between different schools of thought. And they find imaginative ways to deliver the news, even analyze the way that news and information make their way to you. The Listening Post's Jason Mojica now on some of the people behind web videos that attract big numbers, not by using cute kittens, by using ideas.
And going back and forth for a century. I want to steer markets. I want them set free. There's a boom and bust cycle and could
Fear the Boom and Bust is a rap battle between John Maynard Keynes, long dead British economist, and F.A. Hayek, his intellectual rival at the time.
Wikileaks? I'm familiar with it. Julian, buddy, we should chat. Come in.
Rap news is a synthesis of music and poetry with current affairs, and its goal is to provide a sort of comical, satirical twist on major stories in the media.
If we all don't take bold action and take it soon, we will find ourselves on very thin ice.
Or what we're best known for is making a video series called Auto-Tune News. It's a mashup of news and pop culture, plus a hefty backbeat and bass line. So it's taking two things that always should have been combined, news and pop music, and melding them using a technology called Auto-Tune.
People have been conveying complex ideas and stories through the oral tradition of song for thousands of years. Today, a new gang of intellectual songsmiths are using the internet to give that tradition a 21st century update.
We've been going back and forth for a century. I want to steer markets. I want them set free.
Economist Russ Roberts and television producer John Papala teamed up to create a hip-hop interpretation of two competing economic ideologies. Their first video has been viewed 1.5 million times on YouTube.
My general theories made quite an impression. Revolution. I transformed the econ profession. You know me, modesty, still I'm taking a bow. So say it loud and say it proud, we're all Keynesians now.
I do think that economics is generally pretty poorly taught. It's taught in a way that's very boring. It doesn't connect to the real world, doesn't connect to experience.
Sama El-Shahat is an Al Jazeera presenter as well as the network's resident economist.
I think it is the sexiest subject around. I think it's how you explain it. I think the fact that they could make it entertaining is fantastic. The fact that it could make people feel less intimidated by the subject, by the language, is superb, because that will mean that people will be involved in the debate about economics.
Have a seat and I'll school you in one simple lesson. Boom, 1929, the big crash. We didn't bounce back, economy's in the trash.
The first thing we actually thought of was, let's do a mini sitcom. Russ actually said, jokingly, why don't we do a rap song? You know, because of just the battling nature of the ideas. I latched onto that as not a joke, but as just a great, out-of-the-box way to think about it.
I'm dumb, that's a rap. We've been going back and forth for a century. I want to steer markets.
It's not that out of the box when you think about the history of using music as an educational vehicle.
Yeah, that's a magic number.
In a lot of ways, this has a lineage in Schoolhouse Rock and Sesame Street, and a lot of great educational programming that relies on the meter of music.
I think anything that makes us discuss economics, anything that makes economics entertaining, which it is, that encourages people not to be scared of it, is something that's got to be really celebrated.
The Gregory brothers have taken a different approach, one that uses broadcast news as its jumping off point. Their Auto-Tune the News videos have been viewed more than 30 million times.
Talk about personal freedoms. They had to believe it, you know. To believe it, you know.
We take the unintentional singers' voices, people like Joe Biden, Katie Couric, and make it so their speech sounds like singing.
I talk to the experts, so I know who's asked to kick some butt. So I know who's asked to kick.
We just really keep a sharp eye on the blogs and on news channels on YouTube, and we just really look for something that's a little bit strange or a little bit hilarious, or someone who's just getting a little bit too angry. Whenever the echo chamber of the current news cycle is getting particularly loud, that's the clip we want to use.
We don't know you, we don't want you. The sooner you're put out the grass, the better.
Good afternoon, YouTube. Welcome.
A duo out of Australia, Giordano Nani and Hugo Ferrand, have created a series that also draws inspiration from television news, but turns the format into a platform for biting social commentary.
Now, the next to speak is Julian Assange, co-founder of Wikileaks. Julian Assange, hello. It's nice that you've surfaced. Tell us, what is Wikileaks? What is the site's purpose?
So there's the saying that nobody ever went broke by underestimating the intelligence of the audience. We're not in the habit of underestimating the audience. So we're not going to hold back with ideas or with lexical expressions. We want to challenge people.
We lost TV to Murdoch, the press to the sharks. This internet, our last channel to connect to the mark.
We're perfectly happy with providing something which is not necessarily huge million hits material, but it provides some much needed juice.
As for the pilgrims to Copenhagen, hoping that token statements and hope can save them, can reparations and carbon trading hold at bay the payment for 2 centuries of global raping?
The comment section of these videos have thousands of posts arguing the finer points of the topics at hand, and the response hasn't stopped there.
I got an email just recently from a mother whose 10-year-old had memorized the lyrics and was singing them nonstop around the house. I mean, 10 years old, these lyrics are essentially textbook introductory macroeconomics.
Michelle Bachmann has talked about the videos.
It is time to stand up and say, we get to choose, we get to choose, it's one of the two.
She said that she and her kids think they're hilarious. So we were really glad to hear that an elected official would have such a good sense of humor about them.
And in a world where even the most mainstream ideas can get mired in political ideology, saying it with humor and music may be the way forward.
Somebody might hear something that they fundamentally disagree with, but if they enjoyed listening to it and they laughed at it, or laughed with it, then they're more accepting of it.
Well, from the depths of doublethink and newspeak, this is Robert Foster for Juice Media. Have a double plus good week.
More Global Village voices now on the informative side of web videos.
A few minutes ago, I was on the internet watching Auto-Tune the News when my 20-year-old son, who has little interest in news or politics, walked to the room and said, "What's that?" Because the music grabbed his attention in a way that few other things could have. And that's the name of the game in media, grabbing people's attention. And there's no better way to do it than through entertainment, whether it be through comedy or music or sex or sports. We like to be entertained, and if you want to get people to listen to your message, entertain them.
Producers of media news are quite clear about the intention of their musical media news. The purpose is to reach segments of the population who would otherwise be excluded. Adding music to the news would have the effect on some people to remember more the content of the news. Also, laughter has an aesthetic effect.
Finally, back in 1982, the late Michael Jackson released the video for Beat It, a track that helped make Thriller the best-selling album of all time. The video was a bit of an homage to the 1950s musical film West Side Story. It used LA gang members from the 1980s in place of the New Yorkers who were in the original. Now, here's an homage to that homage. An American production house called Seedwell has divided the gang into geeks. It's the iPads versus the iPhones. The track's called Tweet It. It's our web video of the week. We'll see you next time at the Listening Post.
Don't write no more letters to me. Don't wanna read no more, you know I'm 80-day. I start to watch Glee, it's really fast on 4G. So tweet it, just tweet it. You better type, you better do it real fast. Don't go above 140 letter max. Remember, some devices do not support flash, so tweet it while you're clearing your cache.